So imagine you are reading a mundane, highly classified military flight log from 1947. You are tracking the really clinical details of a standard Arctic mission.
Right, just the usual.
Yeah, exactly. You're reading about oil pressure, altitude, fuel mixtures, maybe some minor easterly turbulence. And then literally on the very next line, without any shift in tone, the pilot calmly notes that the ice below him has turned purple.
And that there's a woolly mammoth grazing in a tropical valley.
Right. And that his plane has just been hijacked by a glowing flying saucer. I mean, today we are opening one of the most bizarre, heavily contested, and just fascinating documents of the 20th century. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
Our mission today for you listening is to unpack the alleged excerpts from the secret diary of Admiral Byrd, Beyond the Pole, which details his supposed flight over the Arctic on February 19, 1947.
Yeah, we are stepping into what I like to call diagnostic muddy waters, because when you evaluate historical texts, you usually expect this binary framework, right?
It's either true or it's not.
Exactly. An engineering log is either accurate or it isn't. A military manifest is a ledger of facts. But this text, it intentionally shatters that framework. It weaponizes the clinical language of a military log to deliver a narrative that breaks, well, every law of physics, geography, and history.
Which is wild to read.
It really is. So our goal is to synthesize these bizarre details and kind of trace the psychological progression of the author as it's written on the page, looking strictly at what this specific text claims.
Yeah, and to set our rules of engagement for you listening, we are looking strictly at the provided text of these alleged diary excerpts.
Right.
Because this document dives headfirst into themes of UFOs, a hidden subterranean domain called Arianni, the hollow earth concept, and even massive military cover-ups regarding atomic weapons.
It covers a lot of ground.
It really does. But we're impartially unpacking the contents of this document just to see what it claims. We are here to, debate the ethics of atomic warfare or the reality of government secrecy or any of the geopolitical implications mentioned in the text.
No, we are treating this as an artifact. We're examining the incredible narrative transition it depicts.
Right, because the author, who identifies as Admiral Byrd, opens with this preface stating he must write this diary in, quote, secrecy and obscurity.
Which sets a mood right away.
It totally does. He frames the document as this moral imperative, writing that there comes a time when the rationality of men must fade into insignificance, and one must accept the inevitability of the truth.
With a capital T.
With a capital T, exactly. And he explicitly claims that greed and exploitation can no longer suppress this truth. Yet, after this highly dramatic philosophical prologue, he just drops the reader instantly into a sterile minute-by-minute flight log.
Right into Base Camp Arctic, 0600 hours.
Yeah, the psychological whiplash is immediate. At 0600 hours, all preparations are complete. At 0610, they are airborne.
Very standard military precision.
Right. He notes the fuel mixture on the starboard engine seems too rich at 0600 hours, makes a manual adjustment, and specifically praises his Pratt & Whitney engines for running smoothly.
Which is such a specific detail to include.
Exactly. To me, this reads like a deliberate psychological defense mechanism by the author. He is telling you, the reader, look, I am a guy who watches gauges. I am not a dreamer looking for magic.
Right. He's establishing his credentials.
Yeah, as a reliable narrator by obsessing over this mundane, mechanical exactitude.
And that is a really crucial literary device. The methodical recording of, say, a slight oil leak in the starboard engine at 0740 hours, while noting the oil pressure indicator remains normal, it serves to anchor the text.
It grounds it.
Exactly. Think about what a Pratt & Whitney aircraft engine represented in 1947. It was the absolute pinnacle of human engineering, reliability, and frankly, victory.
The war was just over, yeah.
Right. By grounding the narrative in the reassuring hum of American industrial might, the text builds a baseline of supreme, unquestionable reality. He logs minor turbulence at 2,321 feet. He adjusts the throttle to compensate for a tailwind. The aircraft performs perfectly.
I want you to really put yourself in that cockpit for a moment. You are surrounded by the droning comfort of peak 1940s aviation technology.
Smelling the oil and the exhaust.
Yeah, exactly. You do a radio check at 0815. You bump the altitude up to 2,900 feet at 0830 to avoid turbulence. Everything is incredibly standard. But then we hit 0910 hours.
This is where it shifts.
Big time. The text states, the vast ice and snow below takes on a yellowish nature, dispersed in a linear pattern. Byrd alters his course to investigate, and then notices reddish and purple colors in the ice.
Which I mean, ice isn't supposed to be purple.
No, definitely not. He circles the area 2 full turns, returns to his compass heading, and relays this visual anomaly back to base camp.
And the visual anomaly is startling, for sure, but the mechanical anomaly that occurs simultaneously is what truly fractures the reality of the text.
Oh, the compasses.
Yes. At 0910 hours, the text explicitly notes that both the magnetic and gyro compasses begin to gyrate and wobble. They can no longer hold a heading by instrumentation at all.
Which is terrifying.
He is forced to take a bearing with a sun compass. The controls become sluggish, yet he explicitly confirms there is no indication of physical icing on the wings.
Okay, let's unpack this because we need to dig into the mechanics of that failure because it's not a small detail at all.
No, it's massive.
A magnetic compass relies on the Earth's magnetic field, right? But a gyro compass is entirely different. It relies on the rotation of the Earth and the principles of angular momentum to find true north.
Completely independent of magnetism.
Exactly. If I'm driving my car and the GPS fails, I might, blame a satellite. But if the GPS and my physical paper map both spontaneously burst into flames, I know the fundamental rules of my environment have completely changed.
That's a great analogy.
For both a magnetic and mechanical gyro compass to fail simultaneously, the text is essentially declaring that this aircraft has entered a space that defies the basic physics of rotation and terrestrial gravity.
And the sluggishness of the controls really reinforces this physical breakdown. The aircraft isn't freezing. The very medium they are flying through is fundamentally altering.
Like flying through molasses or something.
Yeah, the aerodynamic rules governing those Pratt and Whitney engines are beginning to warp. Yet, as you pointed out earlier, he doesn't panic.
No, he doesn't. Which is so weird.
His scientific curiosity entirely overrides his military protocol. He circles the colored ice 2 full turns. He is gathering data in an environment that is actively dismantling his navigational instruments.
Which honestly just baffles me. If I'm flying over the Arctic and my primary navigation tools break the laws of physics, my instinct is to immediately abort and follow the sun back to base.
Most people would agree with you.
Right. Byrd notes the controls are sluggish, but explicitly says there's no icing. As a seasoned pilot, why is his immediate instinct to alter course to examine the colors rather than turn back when his primary instruments fail?
Well, I view it as the text isolating its protagonist. By having his curiosity drive him deeper into the anomaly, the diary organically cuts him off from the world he knows.
Ah, so it's a narrative device.
Yes. The loss of the compasses is merely the severing of his directional ties to the surface. The true impossibility begins 5 minutes later at 0915 hours when the terrain itself stops making geographical sense.
Right, because he spots what appears to be mountains in the distance.
Mountains popping up at the North Pole.
Exactly. He spends half an hour flying toward them, confirming by 0949 that it's no illusion. He writes, "They are mountains and consisting of a small range that I have never seen before."
With an exclamation point.
Yeah, he's shocked. He changes altitude to 2,950 feet, hits strong turbulence, and crosses over the peaks. And what he sees at 1,000 hours completely shatters the baseline reality of the Arctic.
Because beyond the mountain range is a green valley with a small river.
Which just shouldn't be there. He writes, again with an exclamation point, there should be no green valley below. Something is definitely wrong and abnormal here. We should be over ice and snow.
Notice how the text layers the sensory progression of this impossibility. First, the geography shifts with the sudden appearance of the mountain range. Next, the flora changes.
Right, he notes great forests growing on the mountain slopes.
And his navigational instruments are still totally useless. The gyroscope is just oscillating wildly. So he drops altitude to 1,400 feet, executes a sharp left turn, and observes that the valley is green with moss or tight-knit grass.
The details get more and more intense.
They do. And then the text introduces a crucial environmental shift. He writes, "The light here seems different. I cannot see the sun anymore."
So what does this all mean? That specific detail, the changing of the light, completely reframes the space for me.
How so?
Well, when I read about the green grass, my immediate thought wasn't that he flew into a magical valley. It felt like he had flown into a terrarium.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like a perfectly curated alien fishbowl. The text is building this idea of a matryoshka doll, like a geode where the rough, frozen exterior of the Earth hides this glowing, preserved, crystalline ecosystem inside.
I think the terrarium analogy is highly fitting. The diary is constructing an enclosed biosphere, totally divorced from the normal sky, and once the environment is established, the text populates it.
With the mammoth.
Exactly. They make another left turn and spot a large animal below. The narrator initially thinks it is an elephant, then corrects himself in capitalization. No, it looks more like a mammoth. This is incredible, yet there it is.
I just love the visceral human reaction here.
Mm.
He drops the plane down from 1,400 to 1,000 feet and physically grabs his binoculars.
He needs a closer look.
Yeah, he literally cannot trust his naked eyes. He has to magnify the optical input to force his brain to accept an extinct creature walking below him. It's a beautifully human detail.
It really is.
But let's look at why the text chooses the woolly mammoth. If you want to show a strange world, you can invent a monster, right? You can put a dinosaur there.
Yeah.
But a woolly mammoth acts as a specific chronological anchor.
It connects it to our ice age.
Right. It tells the reader that this place isn't just an alien landscape, it is a preserved pocket of Earth's own prehistory. Which makes me wonder, if you're flying over the North Pole, seeing glass is a shock, but seeing an extinct animal completely shatters the paradigm of time.
It does.
Does the text suggest Byrd thinks he traveled back in time, or that he's stumbled into a preserved pocket of the Earth?
Well, it shatters the paradigm of time for the narrator, but it leans heavily towards a preserved pocket. And the text immediately follows this visual shock with empirical data to prove it's a physical space.
The temperature reading.
Yes. At 10:30 hours, over these rolling green hills, the external temperature indicator reads a staggering 74 degrees Fahrenheit.
Which is insane for an Arctic mission.
Completely. He is recording temperate spring weather. The text notes that the navigation instruments briefly seem normal again, though he remains puzzled by them. But when he attempts to contact base camp to report this monumental discovery, the radio is completely dead.
So the isolation is now absolute. His compasses are broken, his sun is gone, and his radio's dead.
He's on his own.
He is entirely cut off from the surface world. Up until now, he has been observing this impossible ecosystem as a detached scientist, right? Checking temperature gauges and using binoculars.
Still playing the role of the military explorer.
Exactly. But that scientific detachment is about to be violently ripped away because the text shifts from environmental anomalies to active interception.
We move to 1130 hours. The countryside levels out, and suddenly he spots a city ahead. He writes, "This is impossible." And instantly, the physical dynamics of his aircraft change again.
Even more than before.
Yes. The plane becomes light and oddly buoyant. The controls completely refuse to respond.
He writes, "My God." Off his port and starboard wings, strange aircraft appear, closing rapidly. They are disc-shaped, radiating a strange light.
And they get close enough for him to see their markings.
Yeah, and here is where the text drops an absolute bombshell on the reader. The markings are a type of swastika.
Which is jarring, to say the least.
It's terrifying. Think about the psychological weight of this for a moment. You are a decorated American military pilot in 1947. World War II ended less than 2 years ago.
The trauma is completely fresh.
The trauma of that conflict is so fresh. And suddenly, in this prehistoric terrarium, you are intercepted by futuristic flying saucers adorned with the ultimate symbol of the enemy you just defeated.
What's fascinating here is how it violently collides two entirely different genres of mid-20th century anxiety.
Oh, that's a great point.
You have the highly advanced pulp sci-fi, futuristic terror of radiant discraft and invisible tractor beams mashed up against the incredibly specific terrestrial political terror of the swastika.
It's like stepping out of a gritty World War II documentary directly into a 1940s pulp sci-fi magazine.
Exactly. The text leverages the swastika as a primal trigger for a 1947 military man. His reaction is profound confusion. He tugs at the controls, but they are utterly useless. He is caught in what he describes as an invisible vice grip of some type.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's analyze this invisible vice. In the 1940s, humanity was just beginning to truly reckon with invisible forces, right? Like radar, atomic radiation, radio frequencies.
Things you can't see but can destroy you.
Yeah. The idea of a physical aircraft being seized midair without physical contact taps directly into that era's creeping dread of unseen, insurmountable technological superiority. His mighty Pratt and Whitney engines are rendered entirely impotent by an unseen force.
The loss of physical agency is absolute here. Byrd transitions instantly from an active commanding explorer to a captive, helpless passenger.
He's just along for the ride now.
He is, but the text immediately introduces a jarring paradox. At 11:35 hours, the radio crackles. A voice comes through in English, but with a slight Nordic or Germanic accent.
Which ties back to the swastika visually.
It does, and the message is, "Welcome, Admiral, to our domain. We shall land you in exactly 7 minutes. Relax, Admiral. You are in good hands." The plane's engines simply stop running, and the aircraft begins turning itself.
Okay, this is the paradox I struggle with in the text. You have swastika markings, a forceful midair hijacking using an invisible vice, and engines being killed.
It's an aggressive move.
Yeah.
It is a deeply aggressive, hostile takeover of a military asset. The text says they use his name and tell him to relax. Given the swastika markings and the forceful hijacking of his plane, how does the text reconcile this seemingly aggressive capture with the cordial tone of the captors?
Well, it reconciles it by establishing a hierarchy of power so vast that aggression becomes unnecessary.
What do you mean?
The captors possess technology that represents a godlike leap over human engineering. They can land his plane safely without his input. They address him by his title, "Welcome, Admiral." They know exactly who he is.
So they aren't threatened by him at all.
Not even a little. When your superiority is that absolute, you don't need to bark orders or threaten violence. You can afford to be perfectly cordial.
Which is almost creepier.
It is. The forced relaxation is almost more terrifying than a threat, because it implies resistance is not just futile, but literally impossible. As for the swastika, in the context of this hidden ancient domain, the text hints that it might be an older, original symbol of this inner world that the surface world later appropriated and corrupted.
Oh, that makes sense. It leaves that deeply unsettling connection hanging for the reader.
At 11:40, another message comes through announcing the landing process. The plane shudders and begins a descent, as though caught in some great unseen elevator.
No turbulence, no rough landing.
Yeah, there is negligible downward motion, and they touch down with only a slight jolt. And at 1145 hours, Byrd makes his hasty last entry in the physical flight log.
He notes several tall men with blonde hair approaching on foot. They are unarmed. In the distance, he sees a large, shimmering crystal city pulsating with rainbow hues of color.
What an image.
A voice orders him by name to open the cargo door, and he complies. The physical hijacking is complete. And the text explicitly notes here that the strict, time-stamped flight log format ends. Byrd states that from this point forward he is writing from memory because the rest of the account, quote, defies the imagination and would seem like madness.
It's a huge shift in the narrative.
We are totally leaving the realm of mechanical data and entering the philosophical core of the diary. The deep dive moves from the physical capture to the reason he was brought here.
Exactly. Byrd and his radio man, whose name we learn is Harry, are taken from the aircraft and received with remarkable courtesy. They board a small, wheelless platform that moves them swiftly toward the glowing crystal city.
And the text's architectural description of the city is highly specific and culturally telling. Byrd describes the buildings as looking like they came right out of the design board of Frank Lloyd Wright or perhaps a Buck Rogers setting.
Which is such a vivid 1940s cultural touchstone.
It is. It's an aesthetic cocktail of 1940s modernism and pulp sci-fi. It's this organic, sleek architecture blending with neon futurism.
Yeah, very utopian.
They arrive, are given a warm beverage that tastes incredibly delicious, and after 10 minutes, Byrd is separated from his radio man. Two of these wondrous appearing hosts escort him into an elevator that moves downward and then down a long hallway lit by rose-colored light that seems to radiate directly from the walls themselves.
The ambient lighting is a nice touch of advanced tech.
Totally. They stop before a great door with an unreadable inscription. It slides noiselessly open, and a host says, "Have no fear, Admiral. You are to have an audience with the master."
Notice how the language of the text shifts entirely in this sequence. The clinical military terminology just vanishes, replaced by language that is almost mystical or religious.
It really does sound like a spiritual awakening or something.
Byrd steps into a room whose delicate beauty overwhelms him. He hears a warm, rich, melodious voice bid him welcome. He sees a man with delicate features, with the etching of years upon his face, sitting at a long table. This is the master.
And the master smiles, puts his fingertips together, and speaks softly. He tells Byrd that he was permitted to enter because he is of noble character and well known on the surface world.
The capitalization of surface world is important there.
Yeah, Byrd actually gasps at the phrase surface world. And here is the grand cosmological reveal of the text. The master confirms, "You are in the domain of the Arianni, the inner world of the earth."
The Matryoshka doll is finally cracked open.
The earth is hollow, and an advanced civilization lives inside it. It's just wild.
It is, but what's fascinating is that the text doesn't linger on the geological mechanics of a hollow Earth. The master immediately pivots to the urgent motive for this unprecedented contact.
Right. Why him? Why now?
He explains that their interest in the surface world began just after humanity exploded the first atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The detonation of nuclear weapons wasn't just a surface war ending, it was a planetary alarm bell.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the Master says, "We have never interfered before in your race's wars and barbarity, but now we must, for you have learned to tamper with a certain power that is not for man, namely that of atomic energy."
It's framed as a cautionary tale of the atomic age.
Exactly. He claims the Arianni sent their flying machines, the Flugelrads, to the surface to investigate this alarming development. He says their emissaries delivered messages to the powers of our world, but they didn't listen. So Byrd was chosen to be a direct witness to prove the inner world exists.
Notice the paternalistic framing the master uses. He says, "Our culture and science is many thousands of years beyond your race."
He talks down to him, but nicely.
Yeah, he views humanity as almost violently reactive children who have suddenly found a loaded gun. The master warns that the surface race has reached a point of no return, that certain human leaders would rather destroy the world than relinquish their power.
And he specifically references the hostility of the surface world. The Master says that when they sent their Flugelrads out in 1945 to investigate, they were met with extreme animosity. Our human fighter planes actually fired upon them, pursuing them with malice.
Which is a key plot point.
But I have a major pushback against the logic of the narrative here. The Master just stated their culture is thousands of years more advanced. We literally just read how they seized Byrd's plane midair with an invisible vice, disabled his engines, and floated him down like a feather.
Unmatched power.
Right. Yet when they flew over the surface world, they allowed human fighter planes to chase and shoot at them. If they are so overwhelmingly powerful, why permit that? It feels like a parent passively letting a toddler throw a tantrum and throw toys at their head.
Well, I think your toddler analogy is precisely what the text is aiming for, but it frames it as evidence of profound moral superiority, not technological weakness.
Okay, walk me through that.
The Arianni possess technology that renders human weaponry entirely obsolete. The fact that they allowed human planes to shoot at their Flugelrads without retaliating is the ultimate flex of an enlightened society.
Oh, because they didn't shoot back.
Exactly. They are gathering observational data on the surface world's hostility. If they had retaliated and destroyed the human fighter planes, they would have lowered themselves to the barbaric, reactive level of the surface dwellers.
That makes a lot of sense.
It perfectly proves the Master's core argument: humanity is spiritually immature and armed with weapons we lack the wisdom to control.
That makes perfect sense within the text's philosophy. They were the ultimate untouchable observers, and what they observed terrified them enough to issue this cosmic warning.
The warning is the whole point of the meeting.
The Master tells Byrd that a great storm is gathering on the surface, a black fury that will not spend itself for many years. He delivers this incredibly bleak line: "There will be no answer in your arms, there will be no safety in your science. It may rage on until every flower of your culture is trampled and all human things are leveled in vast chaos."
It is apocalyptic poetry, deeply rooted in post-World War II anxieties. The Master explicitly states that the recent World War was merely a prelude to what is coming for humanity.
And when Byrd agrees, referencing the historical Dark Ages that lasted 500 years, the Master corrects him.
Right. He says the coming Dark Age will cover the Earth like a pall. It's a much more final, total destruction he's predicting.
However, the Arianni's mission isn't just a doom-laden prophecy. The Master offers a specific promise to humanity.
He says the inner world sees a new world eventually stirring from the ruins. And when humanity begins seeking its lost, legendary treasures, those treasures will be safe in the keeping of the Arianni.
Like a planetary seed vault.
Very much so. When the time is right, they'll come forward to help revive human culture and race, returning the science and culture so we can begin anew. Byrd is given the immense burden of returning to the surface as the messenger of this warning and this promise.
Let's consider the intense aesthetic contrast the text builds during this meeting. You have the unreadable ancient inscription, the delicate features of the Master, his gentle smile, his gesture of peace with a slender hand.
Very serene imagery.
The text deliberately contrasts this serene, ancient, almost monastic wisdom against the brutal mechanical reality of atomic bombs and the malice of fighter planes that they are discussing.
The inner world represents preserved, enlightened existence, whereas the surface world represents chaotic, mechanical self-destruction.
Byrd is just completely overwhelmed by the gravity of this.
Yeah.
He stands there as if in a dream, bows slightly out of respect or humility, and suddenly the meeting is over.
Just like that.
The two hosts lead him back to the elevator, informing him they must make haste to keep to his scheduled timetable, which, the strict adherence to a timetable even in this magical realm, is a fascinating detail.
It shows they still operate with precision, just a different kind.
He reunites with his radio man, who looks incredibly anxious, and Byrd just reassures him, saying, "It is all right, Howie. It is all right."
The psychological weight on Byrd at this moment is incalculable. The burden of planetary survival has essentially been placed on his shoulders. But, as the text is about to demonstrate, possessing a world-shattering message and being permitted to share it with the surface world are two very different things.
This transitions us into the final act of our deep dive, the return journey, and the Pentagon's gag order. It is now approaching 0215 hours.
They board their aircraft, and the Pratt & Whitney engines are idling.
Back to the familiar technology.
Yes. The unseen force lifts them straight up to an altitude of 2,700 feet. Two of the Radiant Disc aircraft escort them. Byrd checks his instruments and notes the airspeed indicator reads 0, yet they're moving at a very rapid rate.
The physics of the inner world are still overriding his machine.
Then, at precisely 0215 hours, a radio message comes through. "We are leaving you now, Admiral. Your controls are free. Auf Wiedersehen."
In German.
Right. The Flugelrads disappear into the pale blue sky. Instantly, the aircraft drops in a sharp downdraft. They recover control, and the text notes that the silence between Byrd and Howie is deafening. The text says, "Each man has his thoughts."
By 0220 hours, they are back over the vast, familiar landscape of ice and snow, exactly 27 minutes from base camp. They radio in, and everything appears completely normal. They land smoothly at 0300 hours.
The mundane military reality reasserts itself.
And Byrd ends the log entry with the deeply loaded phrase, "I have a mission," followed by a long pause.
That pause is doing immense narrative work. It represents the chasm between the monumental spiritual task he was given by the master and the rigid bureaucratic reality of the military chain of command he is flying back into.
Because the diary then executes a hard jump forward in time to March 11th, 1947. Byrd is back in Washington. He writes, "I have just attended a staff meeting at the Pentagon. I have stated fully my discovery and the message from the master. All is duly recorded. The President has been advised."
And here is where the text delivers its ultimate conflict. The climax of the story isn't a battle with flying saucers, it's a bureaucratic gag order.
The real enemy was middle management all along.
Pretty much. He is detained. The text specifies 6 hours, 39 minutes to be exact. He is interviewed intensely by top security forces and a medical team. He describes it as an ordeal.
I have to pause on that specific detail. 6 hours, 39 minutes to be exact. In a diary entry summarizing a massive, world-changing meeting at the Pentagon, why does the author include such a granular, hyper-specific measurement of time? What does that tell us about his state of mind during that interrogation?
I'd argue it is a brilliant return to his psychological baseline. Remember how the diary started?
With the oil pressure and the altitude?
Exactly. He proved his sanity by meticulously logging his altitude at 2,321 feet and noting slight oil leaks. Here, in a windowless room at the Pentagon, undergoing intense psychological and medical scrutiny, he relies on that exact same mechanism to ground his trauma.
Oh, wow.
He is clinging to measurable time. The precision of 6 hours, 39 minutes tells the reader that he agonized over every single minute of that detention. He was a prisoner in his own headquarters.
That's a really dark parallel.
The clinical, suspicious nature of the medical and security teams starkly contrasts with the wondrous, enlightened, and hospitable hosts of the inner world.
And then comes the crushing climax of the entire document. He writes that he is placed under strict control via national security provisions. And then, written in all capital letters, he states, "I am ordered to remain silent in regard to all that I have learned on the behalf of humanity." Incredible.
The exclamation marks are back.
He is reminded forcefully that he is a military man and he must obey orders.
This raises an important question. Let's examine the profound irony of the military's justification here. They order him to remain silent on the behalf of humanity. They are utilizing the exact same protective, paternalistic justification that the master used.
Wait, you're right.
The master warned Byrd in order to save humanity, and the Pentagon silences Byrd in order to save humanity. But the results are diametrically opposed.
How so?
Well, the master's path required revelation, warning, and spiritual growth. The military's path demands suppression, secrecy, and continued public ignorance. Think about it like the classification of the Manhattan Project. The military views the existence of the Arianni as a geopolitical weapon to be contained, not a spiritual truth to be shared.
The psychological toll on the author is just devastating. The text explicitly frames Byrd as a man torn in half. The master praised him for being of noble character, choosing him specifically because of his integrity.
But his reality on the surface dictates that he is a military man sworn to a chain of command.
Right, his nobility demands he scream this truth from the rooftops, but his uniform demands he lock it away forever.
It's the ultimate tragedy of the narrator. Consider the stark contrast in how he departs these two worlds. In the pale blue sky of the Arctic, an advanced godlike being wishes him well with a magical, buoyant Auf Wiedersehen and freely gives him back control of his ship.
Total freedom.
But in the sterile, fluorescent-lit rooms of the Pentagon, he is subjected to medical prodding, intense interrogation, and stripped of his freedom of speech under the threatening guise of national security. The text practically demands the reader ask which of these worlds is truly the civilized one.
It is an incredibly powerful narrative arc. Pulling back from the text itself, let's look at the massive journey this diary takes us on. We started this deep dive checking oil pressure gauges on a Pratt & Whitney engine.
Just a normal Tuesday.
Right. Then we flew through a geographic impossibility into a prehistoric terrarium holding a woolly mammoth. We experienced a mid-air hijacking by radiant flying discs marked with swastikas.
We descended into a futuristic crystal city to receive a cosmic warning from an ancient master about the literal atomic annihilation of our species.
And we ended up in a sterile Pentagon interrogation room, muzzled by the very government that claims to protect the world. It is a staggering amount of thematic ground covered in a very short series of entries.
It really is. It moves from hyper-literal mechanical data to deeply philosophical warnings about human nature, ending in a cynical critique of government secrecy.
So why should you, the listener, care about this text today? I mean, whether you are a history buff dissecting 1940s culture, a sci-fi fan analyzing early UFO lore, or just someone curious about the strange corners of historical conspiracy, this diary taps into a deeply universal, highly relevant human anxiety.
It absolutely does.
It is the creeping fear that our technological advancements, whether that's atomic power in 1947 or, artificial intelligence today, have vastly, dangerously outpaced our moral and spiritual maturity.
Furthermore, it forces us to confront the mechanics of institutional truth. Who gets to decide what is safe for humanity to know?
That's the big question.
The text portrays a surface government that fundamentally believes the truth is too destabilizing for the public, choosing instead to manage and suppress the narrative. It challenges the listener to consider the paternalism of authority, whether it's an ancient glowing master in a hollow earth telling us we are foolish children, or a general in a Pentagon briefing room telling us we can't handle the truth.
It brings us right back to that feeling of diagnostic muddy waters you mentioned at the beginning. You want the clean x-ray, you want the flight log to just be a flight log, but instead you get a complex web of secrecy, impossible claims, and hidden motives.
And the diary leaves us with a deeply unsettling paradox to mull over. The master warned that there is no safety in your science, and that humanity's inherent barbarity would bring about a dark age that covers the earth like a pall.
A catastrophic storm entirely of our own making, fueled by our own malice.
Exactly.
So here's a final lingering thought for you to take away. If this narrative holds true within its own logic, if a civilization supposedly thousands of years more advanced, exponentially more peaceful, and vastly more enlightened than us, feels the absolute urgent necessity to hide deep inside the earth, just to survive our surface-level destructive tendencies.
It really makes you wonder.
It does. What does that say about who the real monsters of this story are? Are we, the surface dwellers with our atomic bombs, our fighter planes, and our gag orders, the actual horror story that the inner earth tells its children?